Hello, namaste. Welcome to the Advaita channel. Happy to be here. Happy to be reading from Rupert Spira, The Transparency of Things, Contemplating the Nature of Experience. If you're new, you can, and you're joining live, then you can, if you're signed in, you can make comments. And what I do is I read through to the breaks within the book, and then there's some silence to allow some of this to really be digested. They're really clear, beautiful experiential pointings that help us to feel this reality. I'll read out the summary, actually, which I've done before on the back. It makes it very, very clear. The purpose of Rupert Spira's book is to look clearly and simply at the nature of experience without any attempt to change it. A series of contemplations leads us gently but directly to see that our essential nature is neither a body nor a mind. It is the conscious presence that is aware of this current experience. As such, it is nothing that can be experienced as an object, and yet it is undeniably present. However, these contemplations go much further than this. As we take our stand knowingly as this conscious presence that we always already are, and reconsider the objects of the body, mind, and world, we find that they do not simply appear to this presence, they appear within it. And further exploration reveals that they do not simply appear within this presence, but as this presence. Finally, we are led to see that it is in fact this very presence itself that takes the shape of our experience from moment to moment, whilst always remaining only itself. We see that our experience is and has only ever been one seamless totality with no separate entities, objects, or parts anywhere to be found. Namaste, Stefan. Thank you for joining. Hoping the sound's coming through okay. If it's not, then let me know in the YouTube chat so that I can hopefully rectify that. Sadhguru Mujiji Ki Jai. Sadhguru Anantaji Ki Jai. Knowing is being is loving. Consciousness knows a thing by being that thing. Consciousness cannot know anything that is not itself. Consciousness sometimes identifies itself with the body and the mind. It bestows its own identity, the sense of I-ness, which is inherent within itself, onto the objects of the body and the mind. This identification comes from a true experience. Consciousness is one with everything that it experiences. In fact, consciousness does not really experience a thing. It is that thing, and its being that thing is its mode of knowing that thing. It would be impossible for anything to exist in our experience that was not one with consciousness. Identity is inherent in consciousness. Identification is being the same as, being one with. Nothing is separate from consciousness. Consciousness knows a thing by being one with it, by being that thing. Therefore, identification, in the sense of being one with, is not a sign of ignorance. It is an inescapable fact of experience. However, what is ignorant is the exclusive identification of consciousness with one part of the totality over and above another part. To remedy this exclusivity, consciousness initially disidentifies itself from the body-mind. Consciousness releases itself from this partial identification. Consciousness withdraws the sense of me-ness from the body-mind and allows it to return to its true abode, to itself. We, consciousness, take the position I am nothing conceivable or perceivable. This is a pedagogical step that is taken in order to draw attention to the presence and primacy of consciousness, and to indicate that consciousness is when objects are not present, as well as during their appearance. However, we cannot really return identity to consciousness, because identity is always already inherent within consciousness. That is what consciousness is. Nor can we withdraw identification from the body-mind. As soon as consciousness is withdrawn from any object, that object, by definition, vanishes. It becomes non-existent. There is never a true object of consciousness, and therefore consciousness is never the subject of experience. Consciousness and its object are always one, beyond the realm of subject and object. In reality, there are no objects of consciousness, but we grant the provisional status of objectivity to all appearances, including the body-mind, in order to relieve consciousness' partial identification with the body-mind. It is the I am the body-mind belief that gives rise to the I am not the world belief. These two beliefs are co-created. When consciousness relieves itself of the belief and feeling that it is the body-mind, it simultaneously relieves itself of the belief and the feeling that it is not the world. In this provisional state, consciousness is now free to identify itself with the totality of its experience, not just a fragment, not just a body-mind. In fact, consciousness is always one with the totality of its experience. But this process is very powerful, and it re-establishes the unity of all things in our actual experience. Although consciousness is always only the totality and never the fragment, although the unity is always established, we now think and feel that it is so. Love is the name we give to consciousness when it reawakens to its identity with all things, when it recognizes itself in all things, as all things. Love is the natural condition of consciousness when it is knowingly one with all things. It includes all things within itself and is itself the substance of all things. Namaste, Jane. Lovely to have you with us. So see you're switching to mobile, Stefan. I hope it's better quality. Changeless presence. There is something present which is experiencing the current situation. We do not know what that something is, yet we know for certain that it is present, that it is conscious. We know that it is not the mind, the body, or the world, because the mind, the body, and the world are part of the current situation that is being experienced. The mind, the body, and the world appear to this witnessing presence of consciousness. If we try to find this consciousness, if we turn our attention towards it, we are unable to see it or find it, because it does not have any objective qualities. If it had objective qualities, these qualities would themselves be part of the current situation that is being experienced. They would be experienced by this witnessing presence of consciousness. They would appear to it along with all other objects. At the same time, it is our direct experience that this witnessing presence of consciousness is undeniably present. It is our most intimate self. It is what we know ourselves to be. It is what we call I. The current situation is changing all the time. Even if the changes are minute, nevertheless, from moment to moment, we are presented with a different configuration of mind, body, and/or world. However, this conscious witnessing presence, this I, never changes. It is always simply present, open, available, aware. I'm just checking into this now. There are certain points throughout the book where it just really kind of brings this self-recognition. So take the opportunity, if there is a natural pause, to just feel into that. I'll read that again. I think it's very, very powerful. However, this conscious witnessing presence, this I, never changes. It is always simply present, open, available, aware. Due to the inadvertent and exclusive association of consciousness with the body and the mind, we tend to think that any change in the body and the mind implies a change in consciousness. However, if we look closely at our experience, we see clearly that we have never experienced any change in consciousness itself. If we look back over our lives, we see that this conscious presence has always been exactly as it is now. It has never changed, moved, appeared, or disappeared. The very first experience we ever had as a newborn baby was experienced by this witnessing presence of consciousness. Consciousness was present to witness this first experience. But did we ever experience the appearance of consciousness? If the appearance of consciousness was an experience, there would have to have been another consciousness present to witness this appearance. And if the appearance of consciousness has never been experienced, what validity is there to the claim that consciousness appears, that it has a beginning, that it was born? Likewise, have we ever experienced an end to consciousness? If we experienced the disappearance of consciousness, there would have to be another consciousness present to witness this disappearance. And this new consciousness, which witnessed the disappearance of the old consciousness, would have to be present during and after its disappearance in order to make the claim legitimately that it witnessed its disappearance. Therefore, we cannot claim that we ever have the experience of the disappearance of consciousness. And so what validity is there to our conviction that we, as consciousness, die? We experience a beginning and an end to all objects, but we never experience a beginning or an end to consciousness, to ourself. We may think that consciousness disappears when we fall asleep and reappears on waking. But this is in fact not our experience. It is an uninvestigated belief. However, it is a belief that has taken hold so deeply and become so much a part of the accepted norm that we actually think that we experience the disappearance of consciousness when we fall asleep. As we fall asleep, we first experience the withdrawal of sense perceptions, or more accurately, the faculties of perceiving and sensing. With the disappearance of perceiving, the world vanishes from our experience. And with the disappearance of sensing, the body vanishes from our experience, leaving only thinking and imagining. This is the dream state. The thinking and imagining functions are in turn withdrawn, and as a result, the dream state gives way to deep sleep. In deep sleep, consciousness simply remains as it always is, open and aware, only there are no objects present within it. Consciousness projects the appearance of the mind, body, and world by taking the shape of thinking, sensing, and perceiving. The process of falling asleep is not one of a separate entity transitioning through states. It is simply the withdrawal of this projection. Due to the fact that we have so closely and exclusively identified consciousness with the body and the mind, we presume that the absence of the mind and body during the experience of deep sleep implies an absence of consciousness. However, that is simply the mind's interpretation of an experience during which it was not present. It is a presumption based on a presumption. It is a presumption that consciousness is in reality exclusively identified with the body and the mind. And this in turn gives rise to another presumption that consciousness disappears when the body and the mind disappear on falling asleep, and by implication, when the body dies. This is not our experience in the first case, and there is no evidence to suggest that it will be our experience in the second. There is evidence that sentience disappears on death, but not that consciousness disappears. After a period of deep sleep, the consciousness that was present there takes the shape of thinking and imagining, and as a result, the dream state reappears. And in turn, after a period of dreaming, consciousness takes the shape of sensing and perceiving, and as a result, the body and the world are recreated. That is, the waking state reappears. If we look at deep sleep from the point of view of the waking state, it appears to have lasted a certain length of time, in the same way that the objects that appear in the dream and waking states appear to last for a certain length of time. Time is the imagined duration between one appearance and another. There are no appearances during deep sleep, and therefore time is not present there. The time is the imagined duration between one appearance and another. There are no appearances during deep sleep, and therefore time is not present there. In fact, time is not even present in the dreaming and waking states, but at least the illusion of time is present in these states. In deep sleep, not even the illusion of time is present. Time, in the waking and dreaming states, is an illusion. In deep sleep, it is a presumption. Stefan, so I'm just going to read out your comments. This is why other teachers distinguish between consciousness and awareness, as I can be the unconscious and be aware of this. Still, I'm not clear about the deep sleep thing. I think what Rupert is describing here, because sometimes it may seem contrary to what other people say about deep sleep, and to be honest, it's not always as clear as it can be for me, but it's not something that I give too much sort of thought to. But I think what Rupert is saying is that because there's no objects present, then there is no experience. But that doesn't mean that there's no consciousness, just because there's no appearance. Yeah. I'll keep reading and I'll see if things become clearer. Failing that, bring this question or any confusion to satsang with Ananta, and hopefully it can sort of become clearer there. The language of the waking state is based on objects and time. So the language of the waking state is based on objects and time. And therefore, when we view dreamless sleep from the point of view of the waking state, so I'll start again. The language of the waking state is based on objects and time. And therefore, when we view dreamless sleep from the point of view of the waking state, we think that it must have lasted for a certain duration, because the mind cannot imagine timelessness. The mind construes that the time it imagines to be real is an actual experience. It imagines that time is present in the absence of mind, in the absence of itself, and therefore imagines that deep sleep has duration. Deep sleep is therefore considered to be a state. However, divested of duration, deep sleep is in fact the timeless presence of consciousness that is beyond, behind, and within all states. And although it gives birth to the appearance of time, it is not itself in time. Our experience is that deep sleep is simply the timeless presence of consciousness that does not appear or disappear. Does that which is present during deep sleep, or rather that which is present as deep sleep, disappear when the dreaming world appears? No, the dreaming world simply emerges within deep sleep, that is, within this timeless consciousness. Does that which is present as deep sleep disappear when the world of the waking state appears? No, the waking world simply emerges within deep sleep, within this timeless consciousness. The transition from deep sleep to dreaming to waking is seamless. In fact, it is not a transition at all. It is presumed to be a transition only from the point of view of the waking state, where a separate entity seems to transition from one state to another. However, from the point of view of consciousness, there is no transition. There is simply a flow of changing appearances, and sometimes no appearances at all, in its own ever-present reality. That which is deep sleep, timeless presence, does not disappear in order for dreaming and waking worlds to appear. It simply remains as it always is, and at the same time takes the shape of the dreaming and waking worlds. At no point in this process does a separate entity fall asleep or transition from one state to another. Nobody falls asleep and nobody wakes up. When viewed from the perspective of the waking state, deep sleep is a state. When viewed from its own perspective, it is timeless presence. See, it's interesting, Stefan. You say the brain is still working in deep sleep. See, that's a thought. It's what Rupert's saying is it's a presumption that the brain is still working during deep sleep. So that's viewed from the waking state. So it's a thought projection. And knowing that one slept, I mean, there's no one to see that I woke up, and there's no one to see that I fell asleep. So I think what Rupert's saying is that these things are presumptions, that I slept, that I was born, that I died, from the perspective of consciousness, which I think he uses consciousness and awareness interchangeably. From the perspective of awareness, there is no falling asleep, there is no waking up. That's a perspective viewed from the mind of myself as person, as body mind. From the perspective of body mind, I wake up, I go to sleep, I'm born and I die. But from the perspective of awareness, it's eternal. There is no beginning and there is no end. Yeah, it all has to do with the standpoint and the factor of time. My mind cannot get it. Yeah, this is true. Trying to understand it with the mind from that mental standpoint, it's very confusing. But there's something in here that there's something that has really sort of digested this. And I mean, I'm not as I don't feel that I can express it as perhaps well or competently as perhaps Nantachi. So this is why it's probably really good to bring it into satsang. I can only do my best, but it is seen it is seen that time is, like Rupert's saying here, time is the duration between two different appearances, and that's two different appearances based on a mental standpoint. We'll make a distinction between there was, going to sleep and there was waking up, but that's a mental, that's coming from a mental standpoint, and that's not the actual reality of the experience. Waking appears within me, within consciousness. The world of appearances appear within consciousness. But when we look at, we project this idea of I fall asleep and I wake up, those are appearances taking place within consciousness. Nobody falls asleep and nobody wakes up. So rather than try and sort of understand with the mind, just perhaps relinquish that need to grasp, to understand with the mind, and just feel the experience of being aware right now. And just trust that grace, through satsang, through being part of this sangha, will bring the understanding, the realization that's required. Relinquish the need to understand. One thing's very apparent is that consciousness is here, awareness is here. And what's beautiful is that in this understanding, you understand that consciousness or awareness cannot be separated from any of the appearances. It's when you exclusively identify with this body, mind, or a specific appearance is where ignorance comes in, and you recognize that consciousness is taking the shape of all of this, and it's a felt understanding rather than an intellectual understanding. Then this is the intimacy of all experience. This is what Rupert's talking about, and says is love. Thank you for joining today, Stefan, and anyone else that may join and watch this back. Blessings to you. Sadhguru Mujiji Ki Jai. Sadhguru Ananta Ji Ki Jai.